used to feel like a solid thing, something that stood outside human opinion, and a reality that existed whether or not we agreed with it. But somewhere in the last century, that solidity began to dissolve. Today, the word truth feels fragile, and we have scientific truths, political truths, personal truths, and even algorithmic truths. Each claims authority, each contradicts another. Philosophers once called truth correspondence, the alignment between what we think and what actually is. If I say the earth revolves around the sun, and it does, then my statement is true. But as language, perception, and knowledge itself were questioned, that simple equation broke down. Nietzsche declared in 1873 that truths are illusions we have forgotten, and forgotten are illusions. He meant that our so-called truths are merely metaphors, convenient structures that help societies survive, not eternal facts. We create truths the way a spider spins a web, to make sense of chaos, to trap meaning. Fast forward to the 20th century, physics dismantled Newton's solid universe. Einstein showed that time and space depend on perspective. Quantum mechanics made reality probabilistic, not absolute. The very foundation of truth in science is objectivity, and it began to crack. We no longer saw the observer as neutral. The act of observing changed what we observed. In that sense, truth became contextual. It depended on frames, instruments, and languages of measurement. The modern human inherited a strange paradox: more information than ever, but less certainty about what any of it means. In politics, this uncertainty is weaponized. Post-truth isn't just a cultural phrase, it's a truth. When every side has its own facts, power no longer needs to suppress truth, it just multiplies it until it becomes noise. Propaganda is no longer about convincing you that something is true, it's about exhausting your ability to care what is. And yet humans cannot live without truth. We need something to orient our lives, even if it's only a shared fiction. Religion, nationalism, science, each has served as a compass. But once the compass itself is questioned, what do we use to navigate? That's the starting point of this inquiry. If there are no absolute truths, how do we live, decide, and believe? What remains once the flow beneath reason gives way? The crisis of truth did not begin with social media or quantum physics. Its roots reach back to the very birth of philosophy itself. When Socrates asked, "What is justice?" or "What is virtue?" he was not seeking definitions. He was exposing the fragility of human certainty. Every dialogue ended not in answers, but in deeper confusion. Truth for Socrates was not a position, it was a pursuit. Plato, his student, tried to rescue truth from chaos. He imagined a world of perfect forms, unchanging realities beyond the shifting shadows of perception. For him, truth was transcendent, but his student Aristotle brought it back to earth. He saw truth as correspondence, the match between statement and fact. And from there, the Western world built its confidence in reason, logic, and empirical observation. Yet, even in the ancient world, dissenting voices whispered. The sophists claimed that man is the measure of all things, that truth is whatever pursuits. This way, not moral cynicism, it was psychological realism. People believe what serves their interests, comforts their fears, and aligns with their tribe. 2000 years later, modern psychology would prove them right. When Descartes doubted everything, he tried to rebuild certainty from one indestructible fact. I think, therefore I am. But even that single point becomes unstable. If thoughts can be deceptive, if consciousness itself is fragmented, can we trust the mind that proclaims its own existence? The Enlightenment turned truth into a secular religion. Science would replace faith. Evidence would replace revelation, but as reason expanded, it also undermined itself. David Hume showed that we can never prove causation. We only assume it because we are habituated to patterns. Immanuel Kant admitted that we can never know the thing in itself, only its appearance filtered through human perception. Truth, once universal, became human-shaped. By the 19th century, the cracks widened. Marx said truth serves class interests. Nietzsche said truth serves power. Sigmund Freud said truth hides beneath the unconscious. Each tore another layer off the Enlightenment dream of objectivity. And then came the language. Wittgenstein argued that truth lives not in objects, but in games of meaning. Meaning, he said, is use. In other words, a statement is true within the rules of a particular language game, not universally. When we change the game, the truth changes with it. By the time Michel Foucault arrived, truth had lost its throne entirely. He showed that what societies call truth is a product of discourse, a system of power and knowledge reinforcing itself. In medieval Europe, truth came from the church. In the modern world, it came from science. But in both cases, it was never neutral. It was enforced. So, philosophy's verdict was unsettling. There is no truth with a capital T, only truths shaped by perspective, language, and power. But philosophy's loss became psychology's obsession. If objective truth collapses, what keeps the human mind from collapsing with it? The human mind cannot survive without truth, or at least without something that feels like it. We need coherence the way the body needs oxygen. When reality becomes uncertain, the brain manufactures patterns to restore stability. Psychologists call this cognitive closure, the desire for a definite answer, even when none exists. From birth, our senses feed us fragments of information. Our brain assembles those fragments into a coherent story. That story becomes what we call reality. But perception is not a mirror, it's a filter. Every memory is edited, every experience framed by attention, emotion, and expectation. The mind is not discovering truth, it's constructing it. Cognitive scientists like George Lakoff and Mark Johnson showed that we understand even abstract concepts through metaphors rooted in our bodily experience. We say, I see what you mean, because we equate understanding with sight. We say time is money because we inhabit cultures built on trade. Our truths are metaphors that become invisible through repetition. Then there is confirmation bias, the mind's silent sculptor of truth. We selectively notice what confirms our beliefs and dismiss what challenges them. In experiments, people interpret neutral information differently depending on what they already think is true. Facts alone rarely change minds, emotion does. Truth in psychological terms is often the story that protects our identity. Freud took this further. He argued that human psyche depends and defends itself from unbearable truths through repression, denial, and projection. The unconscious became a vault of unacknowledged realities. We lie not only to others but to ourselves and then forget that we did. In that sense, the very structure of the mind is built on illusion. Modern neuroscience adds another twist. The brain does not passively record the world, it predicts it. Each perception is a hypothesis, constantly tested and updated. Carl Friston's predictive processing theory suggests that we live inside a mental simulation tuned to minimize surprise. Reality, then, is the brain's best guess. Even the feeling of certainty is a neurological state, a surge of dopamine when patterns align. That's why conspiracy theories, religions, and ideologies feel intoxicating. And that is because they restore order. They tell us that chaos has meaning. Truth in that sense is not just cognitive, it's emotional. Psychologists studying cults, propaganda, and social movements have found the same pattern. People do not seek truth, they seek belonging. Shared beliefs creates social warmth. Doubt creates loneliness. That's why truth is rarely a matter of evidence, it's a matter of tribe. So while philosophy dismantled truth as an idea, psychology revealed truth as a need. A fiction in the mind cannot give up without falling into despair. And that brings us to a strange contradiction. If truth is a psychological necessity, can we ever live truthfully knowing it might not exist? And then came a time when philosophy doubted truth. Art stepped into rescue and tried to prove what could not be proved by philosophy. Writers, poets, and storytellers began exploring what it means to feel something as true, even if it cannot be verified. In literature, truth became emotional rather than factual, not what happened, but what felt real. Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground shattered the idea that human behavior could be explained by reason alone. His characters act against their interests simply to prove their freedom. The truth he sought was psychological chaos, the contradictions at the core of being human. Later, Franz Kafka turned this chaos into absurdity. His stories are nightmares of bureaucracy and alienation, where truth is always hidden behind layers of authority. Kafka's world mirrors the modern contradiction, a maze where we search for meaning in systems that no longer make sense. Modernist writers like Virginia Woolf and James Joyce experimented with stream of consciousness because the old narratives with clear beginnings, middles, and ends could no longer hold what it felt like to live in a fragmented world. Their fiction was not about facts but about perception itself, the shifting lens through which truth dissolves. Even poetry transformed. T.S. Eliot's The Westland is a mosaic of voices, myths, and fragments. It does not tell you what truth is, it shows you what happens when it breaks apart. Art became a mirror for our shattered epistemology. In visual art, Picasso's Cubism did what relativity did in physics. It showed the perspective is not singular. A face could be seen from many angles at once, just as reality could be interpreted from multiple truths simultaneously. Later, in abstract expressionism, artists like Rothko and Pollock abandoned representation altogether. They painted emotion, not object, an experience of truth beyond words. Postmodernism then turned this multiplicity into philosophy. Jean Bodol wrote that we now live in hyperreality, a world of signs and simulations, where the distinction between truth and illusion no longer matters. The map has replaced the territory. A brand, a screen, a narrative, all more powerful than the thing itself. In literature, truth became plural, ironic, self-aware. Writers like Borges and Pynchon played with infinite perspectives and unreliable narrators. The message was not that there is no truth, but the truth is endlessly deferred, always slipping through the structures built to contain it. This artistic rebellion was not nihilism, it was liberation. When we accept that there is no single truth, creativity expands. Art becomes a space where contradictions coexist, where something can be false in fact but in true, in feeling.